Welcome to the Inbound Logistics video podcast series. Today we are presenting Jim Ritchie, President and CEO of Redstone Logistics, and we're going to be talking about why Redstone is actually a problem-solving business. And here's our host, Keith Biondo.
Jim, thank you so much for joining us on the Inbound Logistics podcast. Our audience loves these things. It really gets a lot of play, so we're happy to have you today. What I'd like you to do at the outset is to introduce yourself and delineate some of the experience you've had across the industry and how that helps you in providing logistics solutions at Redstone.
Sure, Keith. And first of all, thanks for having me on the program. Very excited to be here. And I'll give you a little bit of the background, but a 40-year plus career in logistics and supply chain. Kind of holding in most recent times was Vice President General Manager of the Consumer Products and Retail Group within Ryder's Integrated Logistics team, and then was co-founder with over at Meridian IQ. And then most recently, about 14 years ago, started Redstone Logistics as president and CEO.
Excellent. So the 3PL field is it's grown exponentially. It's become quite crowded. So we've been talking about 3PLs. I believe we coined the numeronym in 1990. What's the secret sauce that you have here, Jim, that makes Redstone successful in a very crowded field where some, honestly, given the recent complexity of some solutions, and certainly the downdraft on the economy, some third-party logistics providers are not doing so well. We see the research. We're conducting the top 100 right now. And a lot of folks are 0 or down 5%, down 10%. Tell us what the secret sauce is, Jim.
Sure, Keith. I think, first off, just to set the stage, we had a terrific year last year with 51% growth. And a lot of that obviously is driven by the model, by what we do and how we do it, and really good, talented people. But let me start with kind of looking at the market. And we both have had a lot of years in this industry, and we've seen a lot of changes. And I think there's probably 4 prominent changes that really come to mind that I've seen in my career. The first one is really around the prominence of supply chain management. And many years ago, it was all about the manufacturing process efficiency, ISO 9000, 9001. And then over time, it's really evolved to where supply chain now has a seat at the table. But it's a complex process. And it's something that touches a number of different aspects of a shipper's business, everything from obviously raw materials to the last chance they get to touch their customer in terms of the delivery of that product. So those changes are really, really important. The second change that we have seen over the years has been around carrier consolidation. And we have seen a number of things happen since deregulation in 1989, where you had hundreds of LTL providers, and we have seen that continue to shrink, in which the market absorbed all of that capacity, leaving the market without a blip, and shippers didn't see any real issues. Fortunately, we're in the middle of a freight recession, so that probably helped. But even on the truckload side, we continue to see massive business failures. In 2023, 88,000 trucking companies ceased operations, and so there are others, the larger guys, that have really taken advantage of some struggling companies to be able to pull them in and create a bigger enterprise. And so that consolidation, I think, continues to occur. The third element is really around education. And gosh, when I started in this industry, I think you could count the universities that offered a supply chain degree on one hand. And now it might be easier to count the universities that don't. So there's been this enrichment of the talent pool that has been a really big enhancement to the overall industry. And then last but not least is technology and the advancement of transportation management technology, shipping technology, and platforms has been astronomical. And it's really been a key to what we do. And specifically to your question, that secret sauce is really about taking advantage of being what we call a solutions-based logistics provider. A solutions-based logistics provider looks at things more holistically across the entire supply chain. And we often tell clients, look, if we push costs upstream or downstream in your supply chain in order to lower your transportation costs, we really haven't done you any favors. And so we really have to understand those things and look across the platform in a holistic manner. But as you point out, it's a crowded space right now, and there are no regulations that prevents anybody from being able to call themselves a logistics company or a third-party logistics company. And I actually think that's okay. If they're a third party and they're an entity and they're helping a shipper with their supply chain matters, I think it's okay to call themselves a 3PL. It just is incumbent upon us to make sure that our clients know how we're different. And I think it is our secret sauce. For example, take brokers out there today where their primary DNA is that of transaction-based, one shipment at a time. And obviously they're looking to grow big chunks of business, but they provide a very valuable service to those shippers in those lanes where there's not a lot of frequency and it really drives them to the spot market. There's third-party logistics companies that are warehouse companies that are really providing specific location expertise that allows the shipper to kind of build on what's really, really important to them and let me outsource those things to a company that really specializes in this aspect of my supply chain. As a solutions-based provider, we have to look broader than a single transaction, a single shipment, a single lane, or a single location. And we try to make sure we look at the entire supply chain. And as a result of that, I think we get very deep in those relationships with our clients. And that secret sauce is built on a foundation of trust and credibility and our ability to not just help them with transportation, but to help them with their entire supply chain.
So I wanted to touch on one of those four changes. In my view, and I could be wrong, you've got the on-the-ground experience. One of those changes that's most impactful is the technology side of it, to the shipper, that is, to the enterprises moving around. I mean, obviously, education, long-term impact, the consolidation of trucking, certainly very impactful. I would say the fact that we talk about demand-driven logistics, which has evolved from that concept into supply chain, and it's accepted globally, probably is very impactful. But to those shippers, it really is about the technology. So there's been a lot of changes in technology. Certainly, there's more technology available to your customers, to shippers. What are you guys doing that enable some of the efficiencies that technology you can derive from technology when applied to your operations?
Sure, Keith. I think technology is just critically important, and we're living in a time right now where it is moving really at light speed. AI, as an example, ChatGPT, is really kind of a phenomenal opportunity that people explore and use every single day in a lot of the things they do. And AI is on the forefront. We got to be careful that AI really is machine learning, and it's not what I call PowerPoint AI, because somebody thinks it's a good idea. But having lived through this technology evolution, in my past lives, we've gone from building our own transportation management system to really being able to sit back and reflect on how do we create the most value for the shipper. And our belief is that in many cases, technology that's built by an expert, that's all they do, can provide some advantages as long as we can configure it to meet the needs of our clients. And so we've decided to go out and buy best in breed technology, focusing on the Gartner Group Magic Quadrant that you would expect, but to then invest our money in how do we make the client experience easy, beneficial, and configurable for their specific needs. And so all of our technology investment has been around the modification of a built platform, or in some cases, when we couldn't find the right built platform, we've had to go out and build it ourselves. But we really focused around what are we doing for the client, and it's got to be client driven. I think we've got terrific, innovative, proprietary technology products here at Redstone. And I will tell you that the majority of those have all been driven by our clients. Our clients have taken us to places and asked us for things that really speaks to the whole culture of our business, which we can speak to later. But it's important for us to make sure that our investment dollars in technology are all focused on the customer. And we have a term here at Redstone where we said there's no technology for technology's sake. It's all got to be driven by the client, for the client. And if we can build it once and use it multiple times, then we get real value from it.
That's excellent. The investment being, I guess, not, I don't want to say laid off, but applied across the customer base would be the best way of doing it. One of the challenges that we see when we do research of our audience is that many of these companies, the shippers, enterprises, they're getting a little thin in the management and application side in terms of manpower. Obviously, that's one of the results of, let's say, a freight recession or a general downturn in the economy. Does the technology solution you're providing or technology solutions you're providing assist with getting rid of some of the complexity and enabling some simplicity for a smaller customer team?
Keith, I think that global supply chains are inherently more complex. And as customers look for ways to be uber competitive in the markets they compete in, it creates more and more complexity in order to make that technology enable a competitive advantage. And that's really what they're after. Ironically, our technology streamlines processes through automation. It drives efficiencies in the business. But more often than not, it doesn't replace people. The people then are able to be redeployed in their, with the client in other aspects, or the client is able to do more because we freed up some of the resource time. Many, many years ago in this industry, you could you could really point to the headcount reduction that occurred when you put your solution in place. Today, it's just not the case. Companies are running leaner, and they're struggling to find the time to do all the things that they need to do. And this technology really helps them be able to find that time by not working on processes that can be automated through technology.
Right. So I wanted to follow up on that because we're doing the top 10 research voting, and we've got about 8,000 votes in. But some of the feedback from some of the folks that are submitting votes is that visibility, or even more than that, on-demand, real-time visibility is one of the most critical factors, given the changes in the dynamics on their side of the logistics and supply chain team. Can you speak to that? Do you see that from your end and trying to supply that?
Yeah, it is top of mind these days. Everybody's getting their packages delivered, and they can go to their app and they can see where the truck is that has their package. And that works really well when you have a closed network. But overall, transportation networks here in the United States are not closed unless you're running everything on a private fleet. And so if it's LTL, you may be dealing with 35 carriers that have 85% of the market. Maybe you've downsized that to 4 to 6. But you're still dependent upon the EDI transactions typically that come in when that vehicle stops at a terminal or leaves the terminal, and you get status updates along the way. You can't get status updates while that vehicle is traveling down the road unless you start to put devices in your product, on your pallet, that's going to be able to give you that type of information. Truckload has even a higher fragmentation, as you know, and you have to meet the trucking company in the technological decade that they're living in. In some cases, it's very advanced. And in other cases, you may have a great carrier that is a relatively small operation that does everything you need them to do. And as a shipper, you love these guys because they're going to get out of bed on Sunday afternoon for you when you really need them to make something happen. But they don't have all the technology that you would want them to have. And then obviously, when you get into the spot market, which every shipper does at some point, there's spot market moves within a supply chain network. Now you've got a little bit of the Wild West that's still out there, and you've got drivers that don't want to be tracked, and you've got ELDs that sometimes you can connect to and sometimes you can't. So there's a lot of challenges. We're spending a great deal of time and investment on developing a solution along that line. And what's helping us is technology that's being developed by other companies that we're able to tap into and configure, again, using that term, to build it into a great user experience. And so we're working hard to address it. Right now, that success rate is not where we would like it to be. And I think in even some of the most popular ones out there that claim that they've got really high success rates, when you peel the covers back and do your own investigation, we see about 40% of that real-time tracking being enabled, which still leaves a big gap. And so we have a ways to go in the industry when you get past the small package world to be able to provide the kind of real-time tracking that everybody is looking for.
I'm going to steal that phrase, meet the trucker in the decade they are living in. I think that's great. It's wonderful. You know, you're pretty dangerous because you've got the technology experience at Meridian, you've got the trucking experience. So when you're trying to push the envelope a little bit with some of these carriers, you've got the inside scoop. Am I off the mark on that?
I think it's important for us that we do understand how carriers operate and what's important to them. We understand how they make money, and we understand their struggles. I think we also have to understand just how important they are to the process. As shippers are trying to get their products either brought in for inbound raw materials or shipped out to their customers, it's a carrier that's doing the bulk of that work.
Right.
And they're incredibly important to that process. So I think we look at it on balance. I'm so proud of our team and some of the things we do. When we issue an RFP for a new client, I think our RFPs stand taller than anybody else's out there in terms of the amount of information we give the carrier so they can price their product appropriately. And I think it is really, really important that we communicate well, we share information. We don't use what we know as an advantage, but we use what we know to make that relationship as strong as it can be.
For the long term. So you mentioned one of the four changes is education. So in a sense, you're with the amount of information you're providing on RFPs, you're helping to educate the carrier too, so that they can obviously have a viable business. But you're also involved in education in another way. I heard a little bit about it, that you're standing up in front of a room full of students, and you're teaching, sharing some of the expertise that you've developed over the past 40 years in your career. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Jim?
Sure, Keith. It is perhaps one of the proudest things I do every year. And I am lucky enough to be an instructor for Kansas University on the faculty there for the last 11 years. And I teach the capstone course in their MBA program for supply chain management. But ironically, I don't teach it on campus in Lawrence, Kansas. I teach it at Fort Leavenworth at the Command and General Staff College. And I'm able to teach military logisticians. Those are my students. And they are all from all branches of the service, but they are all mature, 10 to 15 years experience managing supply chain operations, maybe a little different than the civilian world. But the leadership within the military is really asked us to come on campus and give them an opportunity to get an MBA in supply chain management. And they want that civilian input and to be able to apply that to military problems, to see if there's better solutions out there than what they're used to.
Oh, so that's interesting. It's really not helping them get into the business side after a military career. They're applying what you've shared and what others have shared and taught to the military side of it. That's kind of. I have a letter on the back wall here from a general 25 years ago saying that same thing. That some of the learning and educational efforts are helping the military. So I was happy to hear that.
Keith, it really is, and a great example of that is a recent story where one of my former students reached out and said, "I'm leading a team. We have a problem that we're trying to resolve. I can't tell you everything about it because it's classified. So would you mind jumping on a call and let's talk about some of the challenges that we have?" And so to be able to be asked to come in and provide advice is an honor, frankly, and to apply the fundamentals of things that we do in supply chain, which really in this particular case got back to the theory of constraints. Where are your constraints and how is that going to be impacted? And how are you going to overcome it? And what are some of the things you can do? And that was the gist of what we worked on in those conversations. And so I think this is, one of those things that every year when I teach that final capstone course, every year I think about how busy I am and all the things we've got going on. And after the first class, I'm so happy I'm there because these people are just special. They are just special individuals.
Leaning into that, I love running inbound logistics. Started off in '81, and the 40 some years in this industry has matured, evolved, and went a little crazy from time to time. But I'm having fun. You know why, Jim? Because we're helping people. We're helping people solve problems. It's exactly what you just said. Are you having fun?
I'm having more fun than the law allows, I think, Keith. This business is addicting, and after 40 years, I am still excited. My wife will tell you I don't sleep enough, and it's only because, when I wake up, my brain starts going about all the great things that are going on right now, and nothing makes me prouder than really helping a customer be successful. And I think in that endeavor, we brought in a new chief operating officer, and she's fantastic, Karen Orozco. And she said, we're not in the transportation business. We're in the problem solving business.
Exactly.
And that is what we do. And if that's our secret sauce, it's all about solving problems. And every day is different. And they're meaningful problems where you've got a client on the other end that's appreciative of all of the effort and the solutions that you've done. So it is the greatest job out there. I couldn't be more excited and happier and alive to get up in the morning to come to work.
Jim, thank you very much for sharing your experience, and certainly with that last part, your enthusiasm and the fact that you enjoyed so much and why. So do you have any final thoughts before we sign off?
Well, Keith, I guess at the end of the day, there are a lot of companies that can create PowerPoint presentations or can present this or present that. And as they're making a decision, people are the only true sustainable competitive advantage that any company, any provider like us has. You can copy our technology, you can copy our methodology, our processes, but you can't copy our people. And it's one of these industries where the best people win. And I always tell the client, if we haven't put the best people in front of you, choose the company who has. Because if they've got better people, they're going to give you a better solution, not just at proposal time, but a better solution for years to come. And that's what's truly important.
Thanks very much, Jim. Appreciate sharing that. Thank you.
Thank you.